Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Zoe. I make motherhood and lifestyle videos. Today's video I'm going to be talking all about screen time. That's why I'm in my lounge room at the moment and I'm right in front of my TV. I hope you guys can see me well. I don't usually film here. It feels really weird sitting on the floor doing a video right now. But let's talk all about screen time. I feel like this is such a controversial topic and every parent does it a little bit different. Some parents don't even have a TV, or maybe they got rid of it, as kids got older because they just felt it wasn't serving them well in their house. Some people do time limits, some people have the TV on all day. Everyone does it a little bit differently. So I'm going to share what we do as a family and what our rules are around screen time. Specifically for our 3-year-old, we have 2 sons, but one of them is a baby, so he's not watching any screen time. We won't really be talking so much about ourselves, but more for children. And if you like this video, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up and hit subscribe if you want to see more videos similar to this one. If you have any of your own comments, anything that you want to say about screen time, something that you do that works really well for your kids, make sure you write it below in the comments so I can have a read of that later. Alright, so the first thing that we do for our son is we do set limits and rules around screen time. So we do allow our son to have screen time, but we do have time limits and restrictions on it. Now listen to this really great podcast. I think it was the Beyond the Bump podcast, and they had a professional on the show and he was also a dad, so it was really realistic about screen time. He had some really great tips. And he was sort of going through the different ages and different time limits that we can have with screen time. And he said, 0 to 1 when they're a baby, no screen time at all. 1 to 2, up to 1 hour. And then over the age of 2, up to 2 hours. And that includes adults. So even us, we should only have up to 2 hours. If you go and exceed that limit, then that can sort of create an overstimulation for our brain. And it also stops us from learning and living, especially for children. They're learning so much, so that will slow down development, especially speech development. So for Nate, he's 3.5 right now, so he can technically have up to 2 hours, but that certainly is not our goal every day. We try to stick to a limit of 1.5 hours. So we just find that works really well for us. We split it up into 2 different lots of screen time. I just find one big chunk of over 1 hour is just too much for him at once, and he can't really enjoy it, and it's more like he's binging it. It's like if I was to sit down and binge a TV show for a few hours, that's what those effects seem to be the same for our son. He'll just want to lounge about, and he'll be more lazy and less creative. He won't want to play by himself. He wants to be more entertained because he's just been consuming something that's been entertaining him. So we like to keep each screen time limit under 1 hour because that just works well for him and his age. So we do 2 lots of 45 minutes. That also works really well for kids shows because that's usually enough for about 2 kids shows. Most kids shows last for about 20-25 minutes. And then if he's watching a movie, that's enough for about half a kids movie because most kids movies do go for about 90 minutes. And that way he can watch a whole movie in a day. He'll just watch half at one point and the other half at another point if he still wants to watch it next time. So we find that just works really well for our son at the moment, and there's definitely days where he doesn't watch any screen time at all, or times where he might only get 1 session. He might not get both lots that he's sort of allowed in a day just because we're busy doing things, or he's maybe so busy playing he forgets. I definitely don't just put it on. I only put it on if he asks. Now we have other rules apart from just time limits. So there's definitely times of the day where it's not appropriate for screen time and other times that it's more appropriate. Because we do the 2 lots, we do 1 in the morning and then 1 in the afternoon after lunch. And for the morning session, he can't just wake up and have screen time because that's, we're trying to teach him responsibility and, self-care and all that sort of stuff. We don't just roll out of bed and just turn on the TV as soon as we wake up or get into games or anything like that. We have to get ready for the day and prepare. So we are teaching him that as well. So the rule is he has to have breakfast, clean up, brush teeth, get dressed, all that sort of stuff to be ready for the day. Once he's ready for the day, then he is allowed to have some screen time. Usually he needs a lot of help getting ready. He's only 3, so we need to make his breakfast for him and we need to help him clean up and all that sort of stuff. He can do some of it himself, but not all. So because of that, you know, we can't just instantly drop everything and help him all the time. So there are times where he does have to wait, and sort of in between the different things he needs to do to get ready, he will stop and play, and he'll, you know, create a game, and it might be quite a while until he actually ends up asking for screen time. And then the afternoon, he is allowed it at rest time. He doesn't nap anymore. He stopped that around 3. But we do a rest time, and we do that for about an hour, a quiet time every day after lunch. He has to have had lunch and clean up, and I've also had to have lunch. I'm not doing quiet time unless I'm ready to do quiet time. So once we've all had our lunch and we've cleaned up and we're all ready for quiet time and the baby's ready for a nap, then he can watch, if he chooses to have some screen time with the quiet time, then he's allowed to have 45 minutes. And then he can just, you know, read some books or something, or whatever he wants to do after that, play quietly until quiet time is over. And those are our rules for him. And then just recently, because his little brother is 4 months old, Jude has really started sort of taking notice of things, and, you know, the TV's on and it's bright, colorful, there's sound coming out of it. He's going to be staring at it. And I've found times where he's been playing with a toy, you know, playing around on the floor, and then he stops and just looks at the TV. So, you know, we could do that when he was a newborn, but now it just doesn't really work anymore. And I definitely don't want him just staring at the TV, especially if he's just been put down on the floor and he has a good amount of playtime to do. So another rule that we've sort of just started to implement over the last few weeks, because we've had to, is there's no screen time whilst your little brother is playing. If he's playing on the floor, we cannot have the TV on. So depending on when they both wake up, sometimes he has to wait a fair bit until Jude is ready for his first nap, or he's just no longer playing on the floor. He's getting sort of over that. And then there are times where he might wake up from a nap. You know, he might have a really short nap or something, and he wakes up, and I bring him out to play, and I just sort of warn Nate. He might still have, you know, 20 minutes left or something, but I just warn him and say, look, it's coming off in 5 minutes. And then I turn it off early, so he might have a shorter amount of screen time because of his little brother. And, you know, eventually, I've been thinking about it that, you know, eventually Jude, he's only 4 months old, so he still has a really early morning nap. Eventually he's gonna stretch that out, and he's gonna stay up a lot longer. So we'll probably have to cut out the morning screen time altogether at one point and just have quiet time during the middle of the day when he's having his big nap. And that's just what Nate's gonna have to get used to. So I think screen time definitely changes as children change, and you just have to do what works for you and for the whole family. Okay, so the next rule that we have around screen time and our toddler is my husband and I have discussed this, and we have both decided together that we will not be doing any individual screens for our children. Probably not until they're at least teenagers. Of course, they're very young right now and that could change, but for now that is what we're hoping to achieve. I know that a lot of schools now are doing laptops and tablets and things as a part of education, and if that has to happen, then we will do that. We won't stop him from getting an education if that's how they're doing it now, but we will definitely have rules around that. Now, we're not going to be buying our son a tablet, a laptop, a phone, anything like that, a smart device, for a multitude of reasons. But the two things that our children will have in our house is a shared TV for watching shows, movies, playing games on the PlayStation, you know, video games, things like that. And then a shared computer, a home computer that they can do schoolwork on, use the internet, play games, things like that. And they have to ask for it, and there will be limits, and they will all have to share, you know, children will have to decide, will have to sort of plan with each other when they're going to be using it. But they won't have their own TV in their own room or anything like that, no tablet. Now, I listened to another great podcast, a different one, and it was from the, I don't remember his name, but he's the author of a book called The Glow Kids. You can look him up. If you just look up The Glow Kids on YouTube or on any sort of podcast, he'll probably pop up. He's also a dad. And he's actually a therapist, and he specializes in addiction. and he started to specialize in screen addiction. So he specifically does therapy for people who have screen addiction, which is just crazy that we need that these days, you know, because screens are everywhere. But that's his job. So he has a lot to share about the topic, and it's very, very interesting. And he was talking about individual devices and how addictive they are, and children just really, they don't have the self-regulation to put it down. He was talking about how drugs increase your dopamine levels, that hormone that makes you really happy and everything, by 300%, just to sort of put it into perspective. And then sex increases it by 100%. Screens, if you're doing something fun, entertaining on a screen, like a game or watching a movie or something like that, it increases the dopamine by 100% as well, exactly the same as sex. So if we're giving something that is going to help our children feel that amazing, the same feeling that you get when you're having sex, and then telling them to regulate that themselves, and you know, that they're not going to be able to put that down. If they have that option in front of them, they're gonna go for it, right? Even we as adults have a hard time putting screens away, putting our phone down, turning the TV off. So we just know that our children, any child sort of under the age of 15, 16, just doesn't really have that self-regulation to choose that themselves, unless you have a really good plan in place and you have rules around, you know, their individual devices, and you can take it away and things like that. That could work really well, and I'm sure there's families out there who do have tablets for their children and they do it really well and they have rules and everything. But we just decided that we don't even want to go down that road. We just say with some families who just don't even have a TV because they just don't even want to, you know, go through all that with their children, which I totally understand. Yeah, that's just something we, at the moment, are choosing not to do at all. One thing that really cemented this for me was one day I was taking my son to kindy, and I was getting him out of the car, and this other mum pulled up next to me and she was getting her daughter out. Her daughter was quite young, younger than 8. She was definitely going to the daycare, like one of the daycare rooms. She had a dummy and a mouse, so she was probably about, definitely 2 or under. And she hopped out and she was holding one of those toddler tablets, and it was playing some cartoon really loudly with music. She's stuck in her dummy, staring at the screen, and her mum didn't take it from her or anything when she hopped out of the car. She continued just staring at it. And they're walking through the car park, and she's just staring. Her eyes were glued. She was like a zombie. Her mum was holding her hand, obviously to keep her safe. But she didn't look up from it once, walking through the whole daycare centre at drop-off. I'm not sure how it went. They went to a different room, so I'm not sure how, you know, taking it away from her went, if she got upset or whatever. But yeah, just seeing that and how it trance-like state she was in compared to, you know, Nate, he didn't have a screen or anything. He was pointing out things, and he actually that day he ran off to grab a stick from the garden, and he was noticing things. He was talking to me. We had a great drop off. So looking at that, I'm like, nah, I never ever wanna, I can't even imagine giving my son, who's 3, a tablet right now. It's like, this is yours. His eyes would probably just light up, and it would be so hard to take it away from him. And I think there'd be so many meltdowns and tantrums just taking it away from him, and the endless things that he can do on it. And he also has, like, he has the TV here, so I don't think he really needs it. Yeah, so that's something that we just won't be doing. Alright, so the third thing that we do, what we try to do with our son in regards to screens, is that we try to show him that life is more interesting than a screen. Screens can have their time and place in someone's life, and they can be great and entertaining, and they serve a purpose at times, but we're trying to teach our son that it's not something to rely on. He can entertain himself, he can do things, he can play games and be creative and use his imagination, and we can get out of the house and get outside and do things like that. So in the car we don't do any screens, we don't have any like mini TVs in the car or anything like that. We don't give him our phone. We put music on if we're going on a road trip, and you know, a lot of the time he'll fall asleep or he'll look out the window. If he's getting a bit funny and grizzly back there, then we'll put on a kids podcast. There's so many great kids podcasts out there. Bible Stories for Kids is a great one. Another one that we do is fairy tales, like, you know, the 3 Little Pigs, things like that. And he'll just sit there and listen. and I'm sure he's like making little pictures in his head on the story. So yeah, we do things like that. And then when we're out and about, you know, we don't have, as you heard, we don't do tablets or anything like that, so he doesn't have anything like that to look at when we're out and about. We try to let him just experience being, you know, at the outing that we're doing at the shops, or if we go out to a restaurant, things like that. We try to look more at things he can do where we are. If we go out to a cafe, we try to sit outside, because then he might play out in the garden, and he might wander a little bit around whilst we can watch him. But of course there are some situations where it is really hard to get him to just sit down and, you know, little kids, they can't sit down for very long, only maybe a few minutes at a time. The food's there and that might entertain them a bit, but then once that's done, that's it, you know. And sometimes if we're out with friends and we want to talk a bit longer, maybe we've ordered a coffee or something, we just want to sit down, and our son just wants to go out and do stuff, that's times where we might jump on our phone and give him a game or something to play. I don't like to put something on for him to watch, because usually he wants to hear it anyway, and it just doesn't really work. I've downloaded a few apps for him that are just really great for his age. So one is called Montessori Preschool, and it has a million different learning games about counting and numbers and shapes and colors and things. And I've played some of the games with him before. They're really great. They're not super stimulating, and he can sort of learn something at the same time, and it keeps his mind busy. Another one is the Bible app. You can download a kids version, and it's interactive, and there's little mini games in it along with the stories, so that's really cool too. So we'll give him things like that. Another thing that we started doing is we, after he goes to kindy for the day, he only goes to kindy at the moment 2 days a week, and when he just doesn't have time in the morning, he usually gets ready and then just goes, so he doesn't watch anything in the morning. And in the afternoon, he had started getting into the habit of just coming home and, like, you know, catching up with me for a little bit and then watching screens. And at the time I was okay with it, because I knew he'd had a long day, he hadn't watched anything all day, and he was probably tired. But then after that, he'd be doing everything to get my attention. Like, once the screen was off, he would be playing up a little bit to get my attention, because he hadn't seen me all day. And I was trying to find a way to sort of get rid of that. So we've started taking him out for a walk. When he gets home, we let him settle in and unpack his bag and everything, and then we get ready. I put my baby in the pram. It's a great time to go take him out for a walk too, because babies get grizzly in the afternoon, and a lot of the time they don't want to go down for their afternoon nap. And then my son will jump on his bike and he will ride his bike. I'll push the pram. If my husband is home after work, then he will also come out for a bike ride, and we might just go down to the rail trail or go up to one of the local parks near us. And usually there's tons of kids out actually that sort of live around the parks, and they'll just walk over, and Nate will talk to them and play, and, you know, usually till the sun sets, which is really great. And then we come, and then we get to talk to him as well, and he gets his share of us, and he gets that attention that he's wanted. And then we come home and it's a bit calmer. He's let out all that energy out that he's sort of built up, I guess, through the day, any emotions out. And yeah, then we have dinner and there's no screens. So just showing him, like, this is more fun than sitting down on the couch when you get home. This is way more fun, and you can tell he definitely loves it way more. So on the topic of bikes, we recently bought our son a new bike. And when we were at the bike shop, we were talking to the owner there, and he was saying, you know, it's so great to see parents with young kids come in here, because usually you see a lot of older kids and it's great to start them young and all that. We were talking about that, and when kids start riding a bike and whatnot. And he said, look, recently he's a dad, and his year 6 daughter went on a camp. And in that camp, they had this bike riding activity. They were like hiring out bikes and they were going to go ride around. Anyway, when she came home, she said, Dad, it was so sad. A third of my class did not know how to ride a bike. A whole third of a grade 6 class, which just blows my mind. Like, I can imagine maybe 1 or 2 might not know how to because they were never taught, or, you know, they never had a bike to use. But a whole third. I grew up, like, everyone I knew rode bikes. We all just rode bikes when we were kids. And I'm one of 8 kids. I think we would just share the bikes, and you know. I don't believe my parents bought bikes for all of us. I think we just sort of shared them. Yeah, and it's just amazing to hear that. So I asked him, you know, why do you think that is? Why are parents not teaching their kids to ride? He said, well, you know, people have busy lives now, that they don't see this as a priority. Plus, you know, people are indoors, you know, on weekends they sit around and watch TV and they play games and they give their kids tablets and they're playing video games and things, and that's just more exciting to them than going outside. Which is just so sad to hear. That is what is happening to the next generation, and I do not want to be a part of that. So yeah, every time now, you know, we come to a weekend or anything, and I want to get out. I want to go to a park. I want to get outside. I want to show Nate there's other things to do than relying on the TV. Which is why I think it's so important to have those time limits in place, especially for such a young child who can't really regulate that themselves. He would choose to watch hours and hours if he was allowed the chance to. He'd probably get a little bit bored and over it, but he would still watch a lot more than what we are giving him. So that sort of forces him to go and play his own games and create different things and stories, and he goes outside and climbs trees and collects sticks and all sorts of stuff. Things that kids should be doing, not just sitting around. My son has woken up from his nap, so he'll be joining us in the last little bit of this video. So the other thing that we try to do with our 3-year-old is we try to get him involved in our everyday life, the chores of the house, things that we're doing. If you think about it, if you were a kid and you don't go to work or anything, you're too young for school, you're at home with your parents, you don't really have much to do. Like, you have play, yes, but you can only do that for so long. You're the only kid, you know, especially if you don't have other siblings. So Nate he does play with Jude, but Jude's only 4 months old. So he'll only play with him for so long, and then he wants to go and play a big boy game. And then there's a screen here that it creates entertainment. If you didn't work and you just stayed at home and you can really do a lot of things, you weren't really allowed to do a lot of things, you would want to watch screens too. You know, you'd want to do something to fill your time. You'd want to do something that keeps you busy, and something that can keep a kid busy, and that we all sort of try to do in our lives, is find something that has meaning and purpose, right? We want to do something that helps others, that create something, you know, that's why we work, that's why we home make, that's why we look after children. You know, we don't just sit around and do nothing, or just read books all day, or just watch TV. That would be a very boring life. So that's all kids want. They just want some meaning and purpose in what they're doing. So with our son, we try to give him that throughout the day. Obviously he has times where he does play independently and he has that, but he doesn't do that all day, and we don't expect him just to play by himself independently all day and entertain himself. So at his age, because he's not going to school, he goes to kindy 2 days a week, that's it. You know, I take him to play groups and different things. We take him on bike rides, we take him to a park, and we try to get outside. When we're in the house, I usually do that in the morning, and then the afternoon, a lot of the time we're at home just doing chores and working on the house and different things. I try to get him involved as much as possible and give him appropriate things for his age. So if I'm making dinner, I'll invite him to come and help, and it's up to him. He's sort of a bit too young for chores yet. He can do little things, but yeah, I just invite him and say, would you like to help me do this? I'm vacuuming right now, would you like to give it a go? And a lot of the time he really wants to, because he wants some purpose and some meaning in what he's doing. He wants to be able to see that he can complete a task and see that achievement. So I just try to find little things that he can do. When my husband comes home in the afternoon, if the grass needs to be mowed, or the trees need to be trimmed, you know, yard work needs to happen, or maybe he's fixing something, Nate is just all over that because he's a little boy, and that, you know, boys just love working with their hands. They love doing anything that solves a problem and creates a solution. So he will get out there and do what he can. You know, my husband will give him little chores, like he might be trimming the trees, and then Nate's job is to, you know, pull away the sticks and everything and put it into a pile. And for him, that is so entertaining, and he loves it. So trying to think of ways to get your children involved in what you're doing, so it's not just you're going, I'm busy right now, I can't give you attention, I'm doing my thing. So you know, just teaching our children, hey, this is the house we live in, this is the food we eat, these are the clothes we wear, we have to maintain these things. We play outside, we need to maintain the grass, we need to do all this. And so trying to give them a job in amongst all that they can do, even with a little bit of help, you know, that really does entertain them and it gives them some meaning and purpose to their day. There you go. So the other day, actually, he was asking, he came to the afternoon and he was just really, I guess, bored. And he was sort of over just playing by himself and he kept asking if he could play a game on the TV. And I told him, no, you know, screen time is over. You chose to watch something, so if you want to play a game, that can be tomorrow when you have screen time tomorrow. And he just kept asking and asking, and he kept saying, I'm bored, I want to do something. And I was getting annoyed, but then I thought, you know what, he just wants to do something, that's all. So I told him, oh, you know what I actually need? I need a builder. And he said, I can be a builder. And I said, okay, well, I need someone to build me a house, like a cubby house. Can you do that? And he was like, yeah, I can do that. I was like, are you sure? I don't know. Do you have the right tools? And he has some, you know, little toy tools. So he got really excited. He was like, yeah, I can definitely do that. I'll go and be the builder. What kind of house do you want? And I told him, you know, can you create a little bed for me and create somewhere that I can have my food and maybe put somewhere where you're going to keep all the toys. And he just took off with that. That was his little template, his little blueprint for his game. And he had so much fun. I did have to help him a little bit because he wanted some blankets hung up a bit for his house. And yeah, that entertained him for quite a while, and I didn't really have to do a lot. I helped him a little bit and I would come and sit inside with him, but that's about it. I still was able to get the things I needed to do done, and that gave him some purpose, some meaning to his afternoon. All right, the last thing I want to touch on when it comes to screens is what the Bible says about it. Anything, you know, we try to be really intentional with a lot of our parenting, and we like to look at the Bible when we're trying to choose what we want to do with our parenting and, you know, what we want to do with our children. So I found a few verses that sort of relate to, I mean, you can apply them to screens. Of course, they didn't have screens back in biblical times, but a lot of them can be applied. So Proverbs 25:28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. So yeah, without self-control. So that's why we have time limits and boundaries in place for our son. We want to teach him that. Children don't have self-control. They're not just born with self-control. They need to be taught that. So letting them just binge watch things or having TV on all day is not going to teach them that self-control. You know, we're showing him this is an appropriate amount, and now we stop and now we live our lives, right? So, and of course we need to also be the ones to show him, like, we need to also demonstrate that because he's watching us. Children are watching their parents and what we do. So if we're constantly on screens, they're going to also constantly want to be on screen. So we need to show them our own self-control as well. 1 John 2:16 says, for all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride of life is not from the Father, but it is from the world. So it is from the world, you know, the desires of the flesh, and that can be, I believe that can be related to screens as well. You know, that is a desire. We come home, it's a long day, we just want to lay around and watch something entertaining, right? So that's a desire of the flesh. That's not God's plan, you know, for us. Romans 12:2, this is the last verse I want to share. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So do not be conformed to this world. You know, I think it's just a normal part of everyday life. Everyone is watching TV, everyone's on screens. It's just a normal, acceptable thing for the world. I just don't think, you know, screens aren't exactly, I don't think that they're, you know, from God. They're from we created them. They're our form of entertainment, and depending on what you watch, unless you're just watching Christian content, most of it's going to be from the world as well. There can be some good stuff, but yeah, I think as long as we have that self-control, we're not allowing it to be replaced by, we're not replacing it, sorry, replacing the Bible, replacing God with screens, and, you know, putting that above God, and in a way worshipping the screens, right? Then, you know, then I think screens are fine if you have those rules, the self-control, everything in place. But you have to be really careful, because you can easily just fall into a trap of binging something, not really thinking about it, you know, not being intentional with it. And, you know, it would be easy enough just to probably get rid of our TV and just say, oh, that's it, no more screens, but there's just screens everywhere. And I think it's a good way to teach our children that self-control. That's all I wanted to say about screens. There are a few things that we look at when it comes to screens, rules that we will have for our children as they grow up. Obviously, we're still very new in parenting, and we have very young children, including ones that don't watch any screens. But that's sort of what we are currently looking at, and we hope to continue to be really intentional when it comes to screens and our children using them. But yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for listening today. Make sure you hit subscribe so you can join me for the next video. Thank you.